We pick up where we last left off in the Bad Batch, with Hunter still under the custody of the Empire. We learn that they are transporting Hunter off Daro and using his communication device to lure the rest of the Bad Batch. Realizing that Hunter has been moved to Kamino, the rest of the Bad Batch head over there, but are aware that this is indeed a trap. Omega informs them about a secret landing platform that they can use to get inside the facility. And here we get to take a look at how the Kaminoans move about underwater, using these long tubes to get around, very similar to how the quarrens and calamarians move around as we have seen in the Clone Wars. The Bad Batch then arrive at the secret lab facility that was once used by Nala Se, and it is here that we learn from Omega that this is the birthplace for all the experimental clones. We also learn that the mutation the Bad Batch were born with were then later enhanced to make them better soldiers right in this lab. And if you pay close attention to how many incubation tubes, which I've counted to be about 16, and given that there are only 5 members of the Bad Batch, it does make you wonder if there are any more experimental clones out there. Perhaps Boba Fett himself was also born in this very same lab, and it really does make you question as to how many of these experimental clones failed and how many truly survived. We then get to meet AZ-342-118962-46498721347, whose name is quite the mouthful. AZ for short was the medical droid that actually befriended and helped Fives in uncovering the inhibitor chip plot in the Clone Wars series. We also did get to see him a little earlier in the Bad Batch series as well. We then learned from AZ that the Empire was going around shutting down droids, most likely to make sure that whatever information the Kaminoans had on the cloning process would be shut down and safely within Imperial hands. As the Bad Batch make their way to rescue Hunter, they end up right beneath the training grounds surrounded by deactivated Phase 1 Dark Trooper droids. And as the Bad Batch walk into a trap, Crosshair asks them to join him in fighting for the Empire, ordering his men to stand down as a sign of trust, to which they disobey his order. And Crosshair, lightly anticipating the whole thing, he uses these small devices to bounce the laser off in order to shoot all of his men at once. All except for one who was busy trying to catch Omega. Omega sets off the droids and the Bad Batch and Crosshair are forced to join forces in order to fight off the onslaught. Very much reminiscent of the first episode of the Bad Batch, it's just like poetry, it rhymes. And during the battle, the lone survivor of Crosshair's team makes their escape, and as we learn, Rampart is more than willing to let clones all die together. After the battle, we get a massive plot twist. We learn that Crosshair has in fact already removed his inhibitor chip, and that it was his decision to actually stay with the Empire. And it sure makes a lot of sense. The Bad Batch didn't really return for Crosshair, and it's pretty justified why Crosshair feels incredibly bitter and resentful to the rest of the Bad Batch. Having been abandoned and left to survive within the Empire, he had to accept his new reality and adapt in order to survive. But that being said, I do question whether or not he's actually removed his chip. We can see at times during his encounter with the Bad Batch that he does clutch his head a few times, so I do wonder what is going on with that. Then we finally witness the end of Tipoca City, and the end of an era. Rampart orders the Venators to open fire and destroy the city entirely with the Bad Batch in it, and during this scene, I got a lot of flashbacks to the time where the Separatists attacked Kamino and the clones defended it, and it's almost a reversal where this time it is the Empire that is destroying the homeworld of the clones, which just really makes it a whole lot more heartbreaking. The end of Tipoca City really signifies the end of the Clone War era. Now, the soundtrack for this episode was spectacular and really helps deliver the heartbreak of this episode and the tragedy of the clones in general. So the question now is, what will happen next? It's pretty clear that Rampart has no intention for the clones to continue on serving the Empire, and we don't really know where he's sending them off to. Now, with only one more episode to go, it's not really clear what the story can be headed towards. Obviously, the Bad Batch are still alive, but whether or not Crosshair can reconcile his differences with the rest of the team is another story. It really does seem as though Crosshair is pretty set on his loyalty, but perhaps realizing that Rampart has left him for dead as well, he just might change his mind. Or better yet, perhaps the rest of the Bad Batch, realizing their mistake for leaving Crosshair behind, might change their minds about the other clones as well, not wishing to see any more clones being left behind. I'm also pretty sure that Crosshair will let them know exactly where Rampart is taking all of the clones and what his plans are for them, but given that there is only one episode left, there isn't much that can be done. So we'll just have to wait and see. But now that Season 2 of the Bad Batch has been announced, it looks like we will get to see more of Clone Force 99, and while we may not get to see a Clone Rebellion in this season, perhaps there might be a room in the next. Either way, let me know what you think in the comments down below, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. I am the Lost Acolyte,
and I have spoken.